All right, please welcome Matt Zeiler, CEO of Clarifai, Gail Perry, CEO and founder of DID, and our moderator, Nicole Alexander, Senior Vice President and Chief Innovation Expert at Ipsos.
Thank you, Lauren. So welcome, everyone, to the first session of Computer Vision today. This is going to be a really interesting discussion, particularly because both Matt and Gil come from very different ends of the spectrum when thinking about solution sets and facial recognition. So before we jump into the question portion, I'd like to give you all a flavor of what both of their solutions can actually do. So they've both been kind enough to take a couple minutes to show us a presentation of their solutions. So we're going to kick off with Clarifai, and then we'll go into DID. By the way, as we're having this discussion, please think of your questions. We're going to hold 3 minutes at the end to do a Q&A, audience Q&A, so that we can make sure that we answer any questions you have. So with that, we'll let Matt take it away.
Great. Well, thanks for coming to this talk. So I want to show you a quick overview of what we're doing in our platform that understands images and video automatically. And so we started off with face detection, which is very simply recognizing where a face is and putting a bounding box around it. And it's not a trivial problem because you can have images like this. And what you're seeing here is these images are going up to the cloud to our API, and we're automatically recognizing these things. On top of detection, you can add classification or identification of people. And in this case, it might be a model that's already trained to recognize specific people like celebrities. So for each detected faces, it can then name the person. But what we're actually launching today right here at this conference is custom face recognition. So what that allows you to do is upload your own data into an application like this. And what you're seeing here is now our product, which lets you then label the data. And these are, as you can see, Seinfeld images. You can label them by the people's names. And with those labels, the system can learn how to recognize who you care about. And once it's actually trained to recognize these people, you can search for them. So maybe I'm looking for pictures of Jerry from all the Seinfeld episodes. And when you do a search, it actually finds in each image where that face appears. And this has a lot of broad applications, for media companies, but even for personal photos, like here, where this is actually one of the employees' families on a vacation. This is one of our VP of Sales' sons, Max, and you'll see in a second Ryan, the other son, on the left. And there's a lot of hard scenarios you have to handle with face recognition. So we're very excited to enable you to be able to teach, as of today, how to recognize what you care about with our custom face recognition launch. So please check it out. Just go to our website. It's now live as of now, and you can sign up for free and start testing it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for introducing that first to everyone here. Awesome. So Gil, I know, also has a couple of slides that we're going to show as well. It comes at it from the opposite side of the spectrum, where Matt is doing facial recognition identification. Gil's solution, which is quite revolutionary, is looking at de-identification of biometric elements. So we're just going to get the clicker.
Yeah.
And no one panic. Not sure what that was.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gil.
Okay. So I'm the CEO of DID, and we're doing kind of the opposite of what Clarifai do. What we do at DID is we protect privacy in photos and videos. So we process photos and videos that the organization store in such a way so they're still useful for the organization, but not for AI. Face recognition algorithms cannot recognize the subject in the photo anymore. So I'll jump right into the point. And where is the computer I need to point at? Okay. This is an original photo that an organization store. It can be an employee badge or a photo in the intranet, website, ID card, or Facebook. And this is the same photo, but without the face print. So these two photos might look the same to you, but for AI, they are completely different. Here you can see Amazon recognition, which is a strong face recognition engine. It's also used, from what I read, by the US government, and is fooled and didn't recognize a DID photo. It thinks that these two photos belong to two different people. What's important to know about the tech is that it's not just noise. We actually change the face. We actually fool humans. So you can also print the photo, make it a badge, and it will still be protected, so it's robust. And I want to show you a slow motion of the de-identification process. So the black line represents similarity, and the colored lines represent different face recognition engines. Among them is Microsoft, Amazon, and Google's face recognition. And as you can see, our algorithm maintains the similarity level high, the black line, while extracting facial biometrics which are not important for human recognition. So very soon, actually right now, all the face recognition engines are fooled, and they cannot recognize that this is Brad Pitt, while for us, this is Brad Pitt. So you're welcome to also visit our website, did.com, and use the technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Wonderful. So thank you both for showcasing your solutions. It gives us a little bit of an understanding, particularly as you both come at it from slightly different perspectives. So this is obviously a really important topic. We've seen in the news just as recently as today from the New York Times about all the elements around facial recognition, how it's been used to, from a very beneficial perspective, everywhere from, convenience factors, helping even to identify traffic victims, also to some of the areas where there's concerns around civil liberties, with 16 states leveraging the DMV database in order to work with the FBI around facial recognition. So obviously you've both founded your organizations on particular principles that you have come into contact with over the years. I'm just curious, can you give us a little bit about the different case studies that you've seen and how you kind of see them from both ends of the spectrum? Obviously protecting civil liberties, but at the same time understanding that there are definitely very convenient factors of having facial recognition simultaneously. So maybe start with Gil.
Okay. So first I want to emphasize that at DID we're not against face recognition. Actually, a story we found at DID from when security in the IDF, and then we learned about face recognition. But very soon we learned that face recognition it's like a double-edged sword. You want to use this information, you want to have the biometric data, but you don't want anyone else to have it. Okay, so the bad thing here is that we don't control who is using face recognition on us. And I'll give you an example. A company in Russia named Entech Labs scrolled over the photos of VKontakte, which is like the Facebook of over there. And they crawled over the photos of VKontakte and Twitter, and they made an app where anyone can take a photo of you or your child when she goes to school and immediately know who she is, where she's going, etc. So it's scary. So that's what we are here to protect. And a few use cases, fast, to give you an example of our customers, is one is a Fortune 500 company which wants to protect its employees, the photos of its employees. So if someone goes in the street, he cannot be related with the company. Another example is a printing company which creates badges and they want to protect it from reuse and identity theft. And last example is a VPN provider that have hundreds of millions of consumers, and it wants to enable them to upload photos to Facebook without Facebook and third parties being able to recognize them.
Thank you so much. And Matt, I know you actually have, your solution goes across not just facial recognition, but you have huge customers around object recognition specifically. So obviously you probably have very diverse cases that you've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And with any technology, you see pros and cons. Like even simple technology like fire, it could warm your home or it could burn you. So face recognition and AI in general is no different. And when we're providing this technology as a platform, we have the opportunity to actually learn a lot from our customers about what the good use cases are and what the bad use cases are. And obviously, we reserve the right to terminate any of the bad use cases. So we get to kind of monitor out in the real world. And I think there's so many use cases with other technologies that we have to make this same trade-off between privacy and value. Even I see a bunch of iPhones in the audience. You probably log in with your face already, and you've made that trade-off. You've given some identity from your face to Apple's device in order to make it more convenient and faster for you to log in. So we're really excited to get this technology out there and to provide the good use cases to the world.
And I love the fact that you both touched on, obviously, it's a double-edged sword, right? So, I mean, we've seen use cases where, so I'm going to talk mostly about facial recognition versus the object recognition. But we've seen use cases where facial recognition has been used for criminal justice. We've seen it where it's been used for housing. Particularly in particular segments across society. And I'm just curious, as your solutions become more readily available globally, particularly because Matt, you're here in the US, Gil is based in Israel, and you just think about the clients, your prospective clients that want these solutions, right, for different reasons. How have you built in safeguards in order to ensure that even if you have the best developed solution, right? The execution of it, depending on who you sell it to, can always be used for different gains. Do you have safeguards built in, a framework that you work with, or is it kind of like ad hoc and iterative right now?
Okay, so first, what we do at DID, I think maybe it's more a question for Matt, but I'll answer as well. We want to restore privacy. Okay, so like basically, face recognition is booming. I think it's a big threat to our fundamental right to privacy. And the thing is, okay, so it's like the genie is out of the bottle. Okay, face recognition is here. It will stay. It's strong. It has good benefits. But another thing is our photos are everywhere. And everywhere. Every company stores photos of our faces. And that is where the problem is. I think we're not going to stop share photos, and companies will show our photos. Face recognition is not going to stop. So it's okay that Matt and Clarifai are using face recognition for the government and many things, but everyone can use it, and we can't control it. So what basically we do at DID is we give the control to the company. We fill the gap between these two things, which regulation does not really solve. We fill the gap to enable people to protect themselves. And we currently decide who our customers are, but it's not an issue. We're here to restore privacy. Anyone will be able to use it, even if it's for bad purposes.
Okay. So just as a quick follow-up before we get to Matt, just because you mentioned it's probably more for Matt, but for instance, what if a company wants to protect identities and it could be a negative, right? They could be protecting criminals. They could be protecting individuals that have done something unsavory. So, I mean, so even for making sure that you de-identify, there could still be hiccups in that realm.
It's a good comment. Currently, we are deciding who are our customers, and we're also a small company, so we can reach out to everyone. But the thing is, if you want to make an impact, like something big, and we have a big challenge. Photos are everywhere, face recognition are everywhere. We're trying to give protection. So we will, in order to restore privacy, we have to give this tool to the world, and there will be also people with bad intentions trying to use it.
Thank you. Matt, what's your perspective on the use case and how you built in those safeguards?
Yeah, I mean, our default product is an API in the cloud, which is nice because we include a free tier, get lots of people to use it and educate us, but we also get to see the traffic flowing through. So you get to understand the actual data, and you can kind of determine from that, what's actually happening in the use case itself. And then when we actually work with large enterprises who kind of go beyond these thresholds we have in that free tier, we're just like Gil talking to them. We're really understanding that use case, becoming a partner on that use case, and we can turn down customers at that time. We also leverage our existing customers to ask them explicitly, and we've had this scenario come up where another country wanted to use our technology, and we asked the Department of Defense here in the US, which is a big customer of ours, what do you think about that? And we had an open conversation about it before engaging with this other country. So we're really transparent with our existing customers and really dive in with our prospective customers.
Perfect. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask a follow-up question regarding, now you have decided to work with the Department of Defense. There's been some publication around that, and obviously many companies take a position. Google took one position, Microsoft took another, civil liberties versus privacy and security. Why, if you don't mind quickly just telling us, why did you decide that the Department of Defense would be an acceptable government to work with?
Yeah, I mean, we have a mission of accelerating the progress of humanity with AI at Clarifai, and so military is no exception to that. We think that if you think of your kid getting sent, or if there's a bill of conscription and they have to go to the military and they're straight out of high school and they get a gun and then said, go out in the field. That's a really scary environment. Would you want them to have the best technology to help them make better decisions in that environment? Or would you want to hold back that technology and make it more risky for the military? And these people are, and you know very well, these people are protecting our freedoms here countryside. And so we think it's really important that getting the best technology in their hands so that we overall reduce casualties is really addressing our mission.
Thank you. So I know that both of your organizations are growing, and obviously, we're hoping for a huge scale for both of you. But with scale comes concerns around data breaches, right? Where does all of this data sit? How is it protected? And every single week we see another company has been breached, no matter how large or how small. So when we think about this very sensitive biometric data being housed somewhere, whether it's tagged with individuals or for companies, how do you protect your data, and how do you ensure that the organizations that you're working with or your clients are protecting that data?
Okay, so we basically don't keep any data. Any photos that are sent to us, they are sent in an encrypted way, and then immediately we make them less sensitive and return them. But what's important to mention, I think face recognition companies don't need photos, they need templates. The real risk, and yeah, there's many data breaches, and now we heard about 2 big fines in the GDPR, but there are many breaches regarding photos. So you had the vContact crawling thing, you have in China 60 million photos. The US border control, 100,000 photos of tourists. FBI took photos from driving license, EverApp, etc. So I think that companies should enable us to protect this biometric data. It's less the face recognition engines, because the biometric data is everywhere. So that's my point on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just like any technology or sensitive data, we need to use the best standards that we have. And we're actually going through security certifications right now at Clarifai to address some of our largest customers' needs. And like end-to-end encryption and GDPR compliance are a good kind of base level, and there's much more we can do on top. And we also offer another solution, which is on-premise, which allows our customers to run our platform on their own servers. So if they don't want to send data to the cloud and risk us getting breached in the cloud, they can run it themselves. And it even works like in military applications, completely disconnected from the internet itself. So that gives the next level of full-on privacy.
Thank you. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up bias, right? So, I mean, we've seen how bias has not only affected training sets, but then bias based on even the best training sets, best solutions, is then executed in the wild in a biased manner. So I just want to touch briefly, if you think about different industries, automotive, food and drug, there's oversight. There's some way to make sure that there is governance for those particular industries. So if we think about, biometrics as an industry, not just necessarily facial recognition, but biometrics as a whole, what sort of governance do you see, even outside of just your organizations, what overarching governance would you like to see implemented, or global standards, in order to really help and give some direction on addressing bias, addressing areas like data and how it should be housed, and preventing breaches? And I know that you both come from the US perspective, global perspective, where we have GDPR. In the US, we have more ad hoc governance. So how do you feel about that? Let's start with Matthew.
Sure, yeah. Bias is super important to us at Clarifai. A couple of years ago, we launched a model called our demographics model, which recognizes age, gender, and multicultural appearance of people based on their faces. And before we launched that, we collected a bunch of data and really put a lot of effort to balance across those 3 dimensions so that they were equally weighted in the different categories, like age groups or genders or ethnicities, before launching the model. And that is super important in building the identification as well, so that we have high levels of accuracy in all these different dimensions. And I think the standards are important, but I think a lot of the standards that are being run today and evaluated on these technologies are biased themselves, because they run through these AI models on some data set, but the data set is collected in a biased manner. And there's actually a lot of research done out of MIT about this over the last year, and it happens to be by one of our interns that was at Clarifai for a year. She came to Clarifai because she knew we were super passionate about bias. After she left Clarifai, she went to MIT and published that work that evaluated a bunch of tools and revealed how biased they actually were. So it's really cool to have her with us and reveal this important subject. And I think the important thing about getting the standards in place beyond the data is getting experts like ourselves involved in developing the best standard. I think if it's like a regulatory body that isn't an expert in the field, they're going to choose the wrong way of going about it.
That's a good point. Gil?
Okay, so I have less to say about bias because we protect everyone. But what I can say about regulations, okay, so as I said before, face recognition is here to stay. Photos are everywhere. Now you have regulations. So for example, GDPR addresses facial images, not just as PII, but as sensitive PII. It's more sensitive than other things. You don't need your last name. If someone gets you a photo, is enough. So it's sensitive, but it doesn't help. Reality is that photos are everywhere, face recognition is everywhere. Regulation says it's the most sensitive data. So it doesn't help. Okay, you need basically to fill the gap. You need privacy enhancing technologies, for example, de-identification, to enable companies to comply with the GDPR and protect people from face recognition. What we are doing, regulations are slow. So for example, I think that we are doing, we are very much involved in the, for example, ISO Privacy Committee 2889, in helping to build the first privacy assessment tool for de-identification of photos. So let's say if we reduce the ability of FR engines to recognize people in your company, then you will be liable for less fines and minimized notification requirements.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I want to make sure that we have, and I'm getting the wrap it up signal, I want to make sure that we have some time for questions. So we're going to open it up now to the audience. So please feel free. I'm sure a lot of questions have probably popped into everyone's mind during this discussion. And I see we have one in the third row. Then we'll come up front and to the gentleman.
Thank you both very much. What is your experience or thoughts on video interviewing and using facial recognition software, let's say, to assess their honesty, and then different levels of education, ethnicity? How does it affect, is it advanced enough to be able to see that throughout, depending on the level of education or language or ethnicity?
So that question is going beyond facial recognition and really asking you guys to think, so does facial recognition allow you to make determinations based on intellect or race or other areas through interview video? Whomever, yes.
Okay, basically we get a lot of requests to protect videos. So video traffic is booming, video is everywhere. Automotive companies, smart cities, retail, it's everywhere. And we have an interesting solution to protect identities in videos, which is it's not trivial because it takes a lot of computational power to protect every frame. Which I can talk about it later if it interests you. I'm not sure it answers your question.
Yeah, we've seen a few different use cases for video analytics. One is you have a sales team and you want to make sure that they're confident when they're selling and they're smiling with the customer, and vice versa. The customer is, getting excited by what they're trying to sell. And I think that's a good use of face recognition and emotion recognition there. We've also seen from law enforcement and military about trying to detect if somebody's lying in an interrogation, which I think is also a good use because a lot of other techniques are not very reliable, and that's a known fact. So I think these are some of the analytics that you're pointing to, and I think you can do a lot of the stuff like ethnicity. I don't know about education level. I haven't thought of that or heard of that approach before.
If it's possible, I'll add to that. What a solution that we have for video, which enables you to gain these insights of emotions and even ethnicity and other attributes, gaze, direction, etc., while being compliant with the GDPR and not hurting your privacy. Basically, what we do is we take all the faces in the video and we replace them with computer-generated faces that has the same attributes. So it's a person that doesn't look like you. It doesn't take much computational power, so we can do it on video. But it has the same age, gender, ethnicity, emotion, etc. And then you can process these characteristics without hurting anyone's privacy.
Thank you both. Yes.
On how your technology would prevent the advent of deep fakes?
Okay, so our technology, it's a very interesting topic, and we have the experts who can tackle that problem. I'm not sure it will help from deep fakes, but it might. We didn't test it yet, but basically, okay. So if we protect 1,000 photos of you, every photo will go to a different vector because we want to make sure that no one will be able to learn what we are doing. So maybe, and we'll test it, if you now train a classifier, if someone will try to make a deepfake movie from 1,000 photos of DID photos of you, then I'll expect it to be jumpy. So maybe DID will prevent deepfakes, but I'm not sure.
Matthew, do you have a position on that?
I mean, our technology is not built to counter those right now. We think that a lot of the use cases are not going to be scenarios where deepfakes would be introduced, like your own personal photos or sitting live looking at somebody in a sales call. Like, it's hard to inject a deepfake into those real scenarios.